So this is how to afford a home in a high cost of living area, like where I live in Southern California, San Diego. We have two huge myths that we'll be busting. One right off the bat is that your house is an asset. That is a huge myth and something that can really hurt your chances of building wealth. Your home is a liability unless you purchase it in a way that makes it an asset for you. And there are certain characteristics that make it that. So, hello, I am Eating Yang. I am building a movement toward conscious investing, the practice of applying presence and mindfulness into the practice of investing. Conscious investing allows us to weather the stresses of life and enjoy the process, because the process is life itself. As you listen, make sure that you listen deeply, especially to the pauses and the silences between words and underneath sounds. That is where wisdom dwells. That is where presence arises, is in the spaciousness and silences. So attending to that will grow in presence power, will grow your presence power, and it will also help to build the abundance mindset that we are working to build here. Affording a home in an area that has a very high cost of living, like California, New York, Washington, this can be really a challenging process for a lot of people. I bought a duplex that I house hacked. I lived in the 1-bedroom unit as an unmarried person, and I rented out the 4-bedroom 2-bath. I had beat out 20 other offers on this home in a very high market in 2022. So I want to tell you about some of the things that I've learned through all of that, as well as my experience in investing in real estate in general. I acquired 28 units of multifamily in 2 years of investing. I got started in 2020. And so the first thing that is really important to know is busting that myth that your house is an asset. Your house that you live in is a liability. If you buy the biggest house that you can afford, like many of us were taught to do, that is going to potentially really hurt your chances of building wealth unless you realize that you have made that mistake and you can take measures to really help address that, which you have a lot of options to do so. The second thing is that when you've come to this video on how to afford a home, you're already asking the right question. So congratulations. How to afford an asset or a purchase is the question that you should be asking, rather than, can I afford blank? Let's figure out what are some of the different ways that you can comfortably afford a home without worrying about being underwater. You should think of a purchase like this as something that can set you up for financial freedom, or it could be a huge source of fear or frustration, being worried about whether you can make payments on time. Next, remember, don't quit your day job. Okay. Having a W-2 job or the current employment that you have, whether it's W-2 or something else, is really important, because anytime that you try to get qualified for a loan, especially a larger loan, you need to have 2 years of stable history. If there was some irregularity, like with COVID, a lot of people were affected, then you may need an additional year showing that things have stabilized since then. So really important, don't make any major moves until you have bought a home, if that is your goal, in a high cost of living area. So you'll need, if you become self-employed, for example, you'll need at least 2 years of tax returns to show that you have regular income as someone who's self-employed. And in general, when you're self-employed, it seems like there are many more hoops to jump through than you would if you were regularly employed as a W-2. Buying a home is an investment. Either way, if you are not an investor and you're not interested in being an investor, you're still investing when you buy a home. So it's actually much, much better to buy a home wisely than it is to rent, because there are all of these videos comparing it's better to buy or rent, especially in a high cost of living area. While if you buy wisely from an investment perspective, it is just about always better to buy, because none of that money that you are paying toward rent is actually being wasted. It's really kind of being paid to the landlord to cover their mortgage and their costs. So instead, you're covering your own mortgage and the costs that are involved in maintaining a home, which there are a lot of costs that are involved. Either way you look at it, buying a home is an investment. So it's actually critical to understand this information about investing on a basic level before you decide to buy a home. So number 4, you want to start to understand credit. Look at the different factors on your credit report that comes from the free credit reports that you can get from many banks or credit cards, and start to understand what are the factors that weigh into getting a good credit score. Start to work on those areas that are you have an opportunity to work on in terms of improving your credit score. 5, take a step back and assess how this house purchase fits into your overall life goal. So if your life goals are to have a lot of kids, to move in with your partner, start a family, then you're going to need to take a different approach slightly than if you were an unmarried person, for example. Another major myth is that you should put down at least 20%, but that is not necessary. You can aim to put down the minimum percent if you are buying wisely using the approach that we're discussing here, which is even if you are to need a home that is several bedrooms for your family and maybe for anticipating that your family may grow, you will want to just buy the minimum that's comfortable, that is needed for your family. A lot of what has happened, especially in the US, is that our living spaces have become so monstrous and become these McMansions that most of us don't need. And so realizing that the house is a liability, reflect truly as a family or within yourself what is needed for you to live comfortably. If that is the case, there are products like an FHA loan that's available to just about any home buyer that qualifies with a certain credit score, which are quite on the low side. And there are 0% products if you belong to certain professions. If you're a veteran, there is the VA loan, which is 0% down. The physician loans, which are available to dentists, many people in the healthcare fields that are medical professionals, and the USDA loan, just to name a few. When it is that a purchase that you're approaching wisely, understanding that your house is a liability and seeing how you can turn it into an asset by adding in, for example, an accessory dwelling unit, also called an ADU, or by building a tiny home on the property, anything like that, or by renting out your house the time that it's not being used. Those are ways to mitigate how much of a liability it really is. And so it is okay and safe to put the minimum down as long as you know that there are a lot of costs involved in housing and you want to be able to pay for a new water heater if something breaks or new air conditioning if something breaks down. For the more common approach, you can buy a duplex, triplex, or quadplex. So up to 4 units is considered residential, and you could have those other 3 units, 2 units, or 1 unit pay for just about all of your mortgage or a large percentage of your mortgage. So if you were, for example, I had a duplex, it was a single family with an ADU in California. That was a purchase price of $920,000. I right away, by the way, had to put in AC because it is in San Diego. It's not possible to not have AC. So it was around $25,000, and I had a great mortgage on it where the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was only $5,700 a month. I say only because compared to what it would be now when you're purchasing at current interest rates, it was just more advantageous at that time because my rate was around 4.3%. Okay, so I rented out the 4-bed, 2-bath for $4,000. That then decreased to $3,500 when we changed tenants at a time when the economy was down slightly. And so about half of my mortgage was consistently being paid, and I came out of pocket around $3,000 a month because I accounted for other costs like vacancy and maintenance and capital expenditures. So $3,000 a month was my payment, and then just comparatively $2,400 a month was my rent at the time when I moved from my 2-bedroom rental into this 1-bedroom ADU. So if you were to purchase, for example, a similar property, sometimes you can find even a triplex, not at great neighborhoods necessarily, and so I don't recommend this. It's really important to buy in the best neighborhood you can comfortably afford when you also are able to find a multiple unit or multiple space setup like a home with an ADU or a duplex, triplex, or quadplex. So buy in the best neighborhood that you can comfortably afford because the rents will continue to go up. You'll have a really minimal vacancy, and the appreciation on your asset is a much more powerful and faster way to build wealth than any minimization of negative cash flow. When it comes to a duplex or triplex, oftentimes you can see these listed for just slightly more expensive than a respective single family home. And the trade-off is sometimes the neighborhood isn't necessarily quite as good. So the tricks that I have for you to look at are when you're searching, and I even just use Zillow or Redfin to use the key words of ADU, casita, granny flat. I just put granny or studio. And so when you search these keywords in any random search engine that you're comfortable using that interface, then let me separate this. It's really easier to find a house with a separate space for renting out, where if you're a larger family, you can live in the main house and rent out the ADU, and it can be in a really great neighborhood because these exist anywhere, whereas multifamily is only built in certain areas and certain neighborhoods that are more open to zoning for multifamily. And so they may not necessarily always be as great of a neighborhood as it would be if you were to look for just a single family with a studio, casita, granny flat, or ADU. Back to life goals. See if you can aim to buy a home that you see yourself comfortably living in for the next maybe 5 years, perhaps 10 years if you're more settled and you don't see yourself having to move. And so this can be a house hack situation that you move into or are comfortably living in for a while, but it doesn't have to feel like it's going to be your forever home. So as long as you live in it for at least 5 or so years, it's not going to be a taxing process for your family. Most people move and change houses around 5 to 7 years anyway. So PMI, or private mortgage insurance, is not actually the devil. So busting that myth right here, it is something that is there if you have a conventional loan and you put down less than 20%. But in really fast appreciating markets, which tends to be the same markets that are higher cost of living, you can get in. The house could appreciate sometimes extremely quickly in the case of COVID, but it can appreciate, or you can make improvements on the home, and what you owe on the home can become that 80% really quickly, much more quickly than you might anticipate. And so you can just contact the mortgage company. They'll send out an appraiser. And if you feel ready and comfortable that it's likely to meet the appraisal minimum that it needs to meet that 80%, 80-20 percentage, then you can get the appraisal and they will take off the PMI if it is shown to appraise for that amount. The other really critical tip to remember is you really should be setting aside additional capital to make an extra principal payment in the first year of the mortgage. So in other words, it's much better to get a 30-year mortgage and, as we mentioned, get as little minimum down payment as possible, so that you can then easily make extra payments specifically toward the principal. You may have to call up your servicing company, mortgage servicing company, to make sure that this payment goes toward principal, because otherwise most of the payments that you make for the first several years of a mortgage go toward the interest. If you make an extra principal payment, a single extra principal payment, that could reduce your overall mortgage time from 30 years to just 22 or so years. So that's pretty incredible. You can straight away have a 22-year mortgage if you just plan to comfortably make that extra principal payment. Avoid HOAs. I would avoid buying a condo or any property that doesn't have a land of its own, such as a single family home. That is so much more advantageous if you are to want to have any options down the line to make changes. You could transition to the garage into an ADU, and HOAs and certainly having condos instead of single family homes really limit your options so dramatically. So ideally, they should be avoided. The other approach is to really open your mind up, especially if you are an unmarried person. You can potentially consider, if you have someone that you're really comfortable living with. Keep in mind, this isn't always a friend. Usually I find that that can create issues for friendships. I have had a better time rooming with someone that was a fit as a roommate, and then sometimes that develops into a friendship. So if you are to buy, for example, a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, and you have a totally separate unit with a contact or a roommate, you could maybe consider partnering to get into something together. That is, of course, a very long-term partnership that most people, this won't be the right thing to do. But if it is right for you, it could be right for some people. And so just keep your mind open as to how to be creative and making things work. All right. So the second biggest myth that I would like to bust is it is very difficult to impossible to afford a home. You can afford a home in a high cost of living area. It's just a matter of really learning about your options, your resources, looking at yourself, your needs, and learning about that process. I purchased my first property, which was 14 units out of state in the Midwest, before I bought my first property to live in. The San Diego market was that challenging, and it was the hottest time in the San Diego market as well. It was definitely not an ideal time to buy, but I was just wanting to get out of renting at that time, and rental situation, as well as wanting to have a home of my own, led me to do that. I beat out the 20 other offers because I had actually worked with an agent that had a relationship with the seller's agent. So I was at the open house. I basically met the agent that was there and started to speak with him. And then I learned that he had this type of working relationship with the seller's agent. And so that was really how I got this duplex. I call it a duplex, but again, it's a single family home. And then the garage was converted into an ADU. And that's where I live, in the one bedroom there. So it is possible to do so, but it may be after you get your first investment properties that you get your primary home in an expensive cost of living area. So that's all okay as long as you approach it in a way with an abundance mindset. So that is really what we work on building at Conscious Investor Group. Abundance is all around us. In San Diego, we're so fortunate to be able to go and do a foraging meetup, learn about all of the plants that are all around us within just a couple of steps of walking. Our plant guru will talk about potentially 5 or 6 plants that can be used for food or medicinal purposes. So there's truly so much abundance all around us. It's just growing from the ground and is available even to people like me who can't keep plants alive on my own. That is what we work on from the conscious investing mindset. The other thing to consider is whether you may be open to doing some renovations that could be relatively light renovations on the home. I don't recommend, if you're not already a seasoned investor, to undertake a major renovation. There can be some really dramatic costs that add up very quickly in these high cost of living areas. And so if it's a cosmetic renovation, it makes the property much less appealing to a lot of traditional buyers. And so you can be the wiser buyer that sees that house and sees its potential. You simply get rid of the flooring and you could paint it, do landscaping, put in new fixtures and lights, and really transform the property. If it is a cosmetic renovation, that is a really easy way, an option to get into a home as well. All right, so that is our approach to affording a home comfortably in a high cost of living area, step by step. Please let me know if you think the conscious investing approach is valuable. Please write in the comments below yes to conscious investing or no, and I would love to hear why as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below what is one thing that you found or that you heard that was helpful for you, and were you able to try out the presence through movement sequence that we did as the Invest Her group? Thank you again so much to Invest Her group and Invest Her San Diego. please make sure that you subscribe for more content on the conscious investing approach. If you found this helpful, to take a conscious breath now. Only keep in mind, or out of mind, as it were, that this is really about being rather than a doing. We are combining being with doing, and in this case, the action may be doing actions in investing, and you can apply it to any action you take throughout your day, and bringing being into that action makes it a conscious, mindful action and infinitely increases the quality of that action. We are building a movement and using investing as the action and the vehicle for the movement to grow in consciousness, and therefore we will build in time a mastermind community and mentorship. And this is because this is how business and investing is meant to be done. This is where humankind is to evolve toward. We are that evolution. And otherwise, maybe you can take a moment and pause and just take that to be your YouTube experience at this time. You could click off of YouTube and do something, get up and do what things you need to do, maybe take some investing actions or network with others who do investing. And so that means that potentially this could negatively affect the reach and the results of this video if you were to click off of YouTube, and that's really okay. If you still want to support, please make sure that you subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell on this video, so that you can show that you are interested in this type of content, and then that way that doesn't necessarily have to totally devastate how this content gets shown to other people who may also benefit from it. Thank you so much. Either way, if you decide to do more learning here on YouTube or just more entertainment and enjoy your time on YouTube, be present with that and enjoy it to its full depth. Enjoy the taking it easy and relaxing. Or if you are to decide to take this moment and get into presence and maybe take other actions, that's great as well. Doing it with a conscious approach, fully moving into either decision that you take, is going to allow there to be no negativity, whichever decision you decide to make. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.